when you realize, okay, you have some superpowers and they're no better or worse than your friend's superpowers, they're probably different. Just like you have an ideal diet and the foods that are most compatible with your body might not be the same as your friend. And neither of them is good or bad. They're just different. So it's your job to understand your strengths and your weaknesses and figure out what strengths do you want to double down on and what weaknesses are you going to say, oh, thank God, I know I'm weak at that. I can hire that.
You're listening to the Almost 30 podcast, hosted by Krista Williams and Lindsay Simsick. Almost 30 started as a conversation about the transition from our 20s to our 30s. But then we realized life is full of transitions. So we expanded our mission.
We are an intuition-led, wellness-focused lifestyle podcast that promises to deliver authentic conversations, diverse points of view, and insights rooted in optimism, growth, and intention. The Almost 30 Nation community is a group of purposeful dreamers who are smart, passionate, and always seeking the full potential in every aspect of their lives.
At Almost 30, we're making magic together. We dream it,
and then we do it.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Almost 30 podcast.
Here we go. Welcome back to Almost 30. It's your girls, Krista and Lindsay.
Hello. Welcome back to Almost 30 podcast. We are a podcast that started during the transition from our 20s to our 30s. And now we're so much more than that. And
I'm getting that tattooed on my body.
I know. I can say it in my sleep, to be honest.
Same.
That's a good thing. You need to have
I know.
Your tagline needs to be.
I totally agree.
It's
I
called
love
your
it.
elevator pitch.
I like things that can
just
just
sales,
like
I had to do my elevator pitch.
roll off our tongue. I like
100%.
It feels good. I don't have to think too much. And it's true.
Yeah, it's true,
freaking
baby.
We're glad you're here.
We're glad you're here. So 30, 20, 40, 100, age doesn't matter. We are so thankful you're a part of Almost 30 Nation. Lindsay and I started 3 years ago. I was working full-time at my job. Lindsay was a soul cycle instructor, and we just wanted to do something creative that we loved. And this was born. And now we are a team of women, of amazing females that do events, Your Podcast Pro, to help podcasters start, grow, and monetize podcasts. And we have a lot of fun things going on, but it's been truly a dream and given me inspiration and faith in myself and the world around me, to be honest.
Yeah, we are just finished out our tour for 2019. We've been on tour for a couple years and we will be kicking it off again in the new year, but excited to have had some really great stops. We were in LA and Miami and Australia,
Nashville,
Austin,
New York,
London,
Chicago, San Fran,
Denver, all over the world.
What if we just named cities for 3 hours?
Des Moines.
Oh my God. Actually, TBT. I don't know if you remember this, but when Lindsay and I, this is random. So when Lindsay and I first started the show, there was someone on Twitter that was like, shout out to Almost 30 podcast. And we had probably 6 listeners at that point. And it was this dude. And he basically said on Twitter that he referenced us on a podcast and gave us a shout out. So we had like 2 listeners. We're like, oh my God, like let's listen, what happened? And it was a guy that created a podcast that literally just shouted other podcasts out.
Oh, that's right.
So it was like Two Dudes podcast, Chicago Guys podcast, Sports and Love podcast, Basketball Wives podcast, Guys Going Up the Fern podcast, Cornhole podcast, Sports and Fun podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah,
see you later.
Knitting for Lovers podcast, Almost 30 podcast. And so our name was one of 400 names. And it was so funny because I actually made Justin listen to me too. I was like, whoa, check it out. Someone just shouted us out. And we listened for 14 minutes before we found our name on the show.
Oh my God. I remember being so excited. Oh, wow.
We're like, someone's seeing us.
Someone shouted us.
V humbling.
Oh, wow.
V humbling. So
funny.
So yeah. But this episode is really, really exciting. I love when we do the best of end of the year recaps, because what we do is Lindsay and I go through the data, the numbers, and also the feedback from our community to what we should bring back and sort of bring back into our lives, the nuggets of insight and inspiration and that we can share with you. So we have so much content that comes out through the year, and you guys have had so much going on, as have we. So it's really nice, just like you're doing for your planning for 2020, to kind of look back to 2019 and see what we learned. So within this, there's different parts of inspiration that we can all gather from amazing, amazing guests that we've had on the show that you guys truly have loved.
Yeah. And it's always nice to just kind of go back, even if you've listened before, but to revisit these moments and see if it lands in a different way. You never know. Always the right time to hear what you hear. But our first guest is Travis Alabanza. And Travis was, we had an incredible conversation with them. They are a performer, writer, and theater maker, and they have been noted by numerous publications as one of the most prominent emerging queer artistic voices. And we just talked a lot about being an influential voice, their spiritual practice and connection, dealing with harassment, and being a queer voice in this space, and really putting himself out there to empower those like them who are wanting to be themselves and be themselves out in the world rather than having to hide and, conform to what the world might be more comfortable with seeing. And it was just a really beautiful conversation.
Yeah, completely agree. The next one is Dave Asprey of Bulletproof, the CEO and founder of Bulletproof, Silky Face Dave.
Love Dave.
We love Dave. Dave's one of the best. These quotes I actually really love. I am obsessed with them all because they relate to this point in time in which we started the podcast. So we talk a lot about your 20s and figuring out all systems in the body, and that we really should make our health our own science experiment and making it really fun to figure out what's going to make you feel and look your best. We also talk about women as biohackers, how we are better biohackers. So this is a bunch of health related inspiration for you.
Mm-hmm. Next, we have Donna James, and Donna is a functional medicine practitioner, certified nutritionist, cognitive behavioral therapist, and she wrote the book, The Archetype Diet, which is a bestseller. And so many of you reached out to us before we had her on and said, could you please have Donna on? And so we were really excited to have a conversation with her. And we talk about, how to reprogram what we eat. We talk about those archetypes and how we can eat and live for our particular archetype. And it's really not about dieting per se. This is really about lifestyle. We also give attention to the gut microbiome, which plays a huge part in our emotional body as well. And also we talk about how to reduce stress, just to come back to yourself a little bit more. Sometimes stress tends to just lead us astray from what's really important and who we are.
And the next one is our lovely dear friend, Peta Kelly. This happened when we were in London. We got to record with her after doing an event on tour. And I just read these quotes and they actually make me want to puke. They're so good. I'm going to post them immediately online. Peta is always chock full of insight and inspiration. We talk a lot about her evolution into motherhood. So going from very successful businesswoman, in her own right, an author, and doing all the things to motherhood. We also talk about freedom of speech, taking responsibility for our own life, for our relationship with social media, and all of the things. She is a dear friend. We love her very much. And these parts are going to be awesome.
Yeah. Next is Sally Krawcheck. So if you need some financial inspiration, how to just be, not only a badass at work, but just in your own personal financial life, like Sally has got you, truly has got you. For example, we talk about, every dollar that you invest and spend and you have in your bank account has an impact. And we talk about, the impact that we want to have. We also talk about diversity in leadership teams. So she has been in an industry that is male dominated for, all of her working life, and just how she's navigated that and become so successful. She talks very candidly about her relationship with her previous and current husband, and just kind of how that dynamic works. And it was just like really refreshing,
it was juicy, delicious.
Yeah, to have like a conversation with someone like Sally about that. It was very human. Loved it.
It was awesome. And then our dear friend, Pia Baroncini, the designer creator of LPA, a clothing brand under Revolve's house label that has a lot of celebrity fans. She is basically an Instagram famous light. She is super magnetic. And we had a super personal conversation with her at her house. So we talked a lot about just being in the social space, how she shares so much of her life online, and how she gets so much feedback from haters and other people. We also talked about her finding her amazing husband, Davide, their relationship and their growth and love, and just creating this beautiful, beautiful, romantic life that she now lives.
And then we talked to Cal Newport. We had an incredible conversation with Cal when we were in Washington, D.C. And he is the author of Deep Work, of Digital Minimalism, of Be So Good They Can't Ignore You. He has an incredible blog. He doesn't have Instagram. Goals. Wow. And Cal is, we really dig into how, this really intense digital age where everything is digital, we're on our phones, we're on our screens, everything, how, minimizing that time on your phone can really create a deeper ability to focus and to be productive and to really feel fulfilled. And, he gives us really tactical ways, daily hacks to minimize this time on your phone and strategies for families. And he gives us a lot of science behind why this is so important.
And then we have the lovely Whitney Port. Whitney was such a joy and delight to interview and have a conversation with. And during these inspirational bits, we talk a lot about the importance of honesty and partnership. We also talked about losing her father. So that was a really impactful part of her life. And we talked about its impact on who she is today. Finding gratitude and silver linings in grief. Talked about balancing motherhood with her career. She has an amazing amazing outlook on motherhood and a really refreshing perspective. And this is just a really fun conversation and a great way to round out our lovely best of 2019.
Yeah, thanks so much for listening, and join the Secret Facebook group. If anything resonated with you in this episode or in part one, let's talk about it. Let's have a larger conversation in the group with your future friends of Almost 30 Nation. And thanks to all of our guests this year. We are truly grateful for your time and talent and just your friendship too. It's been really great.
Yeah, we love you so much. We'll see you on the outro. Bye.
It's about to be a new year, and it's the perfect time to clean out those candy and snack drawers and fill them with snacks and sweets, possibly, that are also good for you, that fill you up, that give you protein, that are delicious. And Skinny Dipped is at the top of our list. They have fiber, they have protein. They have figured out a way to create a thin layer of crunchy goodness and dusted with flavors like peanut butter, raspberry, dark chocolate, espresso, that honestly, the combo we've been hearing from people probably every few days, to be honest, and everyone's just loving them. And if you want a little holiday flavor, the dark chocolate peppermint is my favorite and lives in my freezer at all times. So you can snack more and not feel as much guilt. So these are real ingredients. It has plant protein, those almonds, no sugar alternatives, gluten-free, and no artificial colors or flavors. And again, with a chocolate covered nut, so many of these brands do it wrong. The chocolate's too thick. This is a thin layer that is just right. So if you'd like to try Skinny Dipped, you can go to skinnydip.com. Use our code ALMOST30 at checkout for 20% off your first order. You can also find Skinny Dipped at Target, Whole Foods, Kroger's, Ralph's, King Soopers, QFC, and more. So you can click on their store locator on their website to find that out. But skinnydipped.com. Use our code ALMOST30 for 20% off.
When you were talking to your mother and your family, and kind of even the conversations that, we're having or that people are starting to have, I'd love to talk about, the vocabulary of being trans, of being femme, of being gender nonconforming or non-binary, all of those things. Like, where did you learn how to speak in this way and how to express yourself so that people could understand, where you're coming from? And then what's like a way that we can kind of educate our audience and how to use certain vocabulary?
I think it's like really important for me to just say that like these like words like non-binary and trans and gender non-conforming, I think they're an aid in so many ways, but we also so have to remember that like we existed before these words too, right? As in like trans people and people that we would now say are non-binary have existed throughout history from the beginning. And I think that's what's missed a lot in this conversation around, in the current like media conversation around non-binary identities, is people are kind of framing it as this kind of new millennial trend. What that really misses out is like pre-colonization in lots of different places in the continent of Africa, in South Asia, in parts of India, in the Philippines, even going back in Greece, there's been histories of people that have said like, I am not a man or a woman, I'm something else. And so I always start with that to kind of ground this like language that can seem really intimidating. Like I think we shouldn't lie that this new terminology can feel intimidating, you know? And a lot of people are afraid to make mistakes and afraid to say the wrong thing. And I think that sometimes that's useful, but also just contextualizing it in the fact that we're not new really helps me. I'm like, okay, there's been loads of people that are like me that have used other words. I think I found non-binary. Sorry, I'm ranting loads, aren't I? But I think I think I found non-binary on the internet, like somewhere around, and it was like on Tumblr. I think, wow, that's so cliche, but it was definitely on Tumblr. It's not helping the whole millennial narrative of non-binary, but I definitely knew. I knew what I was before I found the word. I knew that I knew that I wasn't a man. I knew that gender made me uncomfortable. And then when I found that there was these people that said, hey, actually, like, you can just be neither, all of them, none of the above. I was like, oh, I'm breathing lighter. Wow, I can kind of relax. I don't have to have the answer. So I feel like non-binary is really helpful as like an umbrella term. Like it means lots of different things. Like not one non-binary person is the same as someone else. Just like I don't believe one cisgender woman experiences gender the same as the other cisgender woman. I think that always helped me explain it to my family. It was like, instead of building this like kind of big wall between trans and cis, why don't we look at like everyone's gender and realize everyone's gender is unique? Like I don't believe that anyone is experiencing gender in the same way. You put two cisgender people together, they're not the same woman. And for me, that's exactly the same way I think about trans, is that like trans simply just means to change, quite literally, but it just means that you don't identify as the gender that you were assigned at birth. And I think the important word that I add, especially when I'm talking to feminists, is without consent. You know, we were assigned something at birth. In my opinion, the first moment we're born, there's an act against our consent. And we're told we're something without us saying that we are something. And trans is just saying, hey, I was told this thing that I am. And I'm saying, I'm actually not. I'm redeclaring my boundaries for my body. And I think that's why I get really confused when modern movements pit trans people against feminism. Because to me, what feels like at the core of a trans politic is autonomy over our body and consent.
That is beautiful.
Wow. Love that. How does it feel to be influential? You know, like, you know what I mean? Like, because you are like, you know, you serve as, we talk about it on the podcast sometimes, as like an expander for, you know, not only youth in your community that are quiet and scared and unsure and unable to fully express themselves. Like, what does that feel like? And is that something that's at the forefront of your mind, or are you just, you know, living your life?
Yeah, really good question. Also, side note, like I'm 23. So I feel like,
well, you're do you feel like you're an old soul?
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel, I mean, I didn't mean you looked older than 23, like when I first posed that question, but because you look young.
I love that you said I'm 23. That makes me so happy. You're like, I'm 23.
but at that young age, I can imagine it's like it's true though.
Dude, that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. that's why like I have to open like any conversation about. I've gotten a lot better at this. I think like before I used to hide my age and also hide the nerves, and now like maybe it's practice of doing this quite a lot and interviews a lot. That I look at interviews now as a chance to just both of us to like find out new stuff about myself.
Yes.
So now I'm just way more honest, and I'm enjoying interviews way more, and I'm having so much more fun doing them because I'm just like, let me just be honest, like 23, like, but it means that like, I have a real, I do get told I have an old soul a lot. I think like I had to grow up from quite a young age due to like having to work loads of jobs and support myself and all these things. I think, yeah, it's scary sometimes, but I try not to think about it. I try and just stay authentic to myself and do whatever I was going to do. You know, I've been speaking about this kind of things before I had 30,000 people listening or whatever, you know, and so if I just remind myself, like, what would I be saying if no one was here? Then it would be this. That's how I test my authenticity. I think that's the only thing to worry about when this stuff happens is, are you still being authentic to what you want to say? I guess, you know, it's also me as my platform grows. It's just about always reminding myself of maybe some other people that couldn't be having this platform and shouting them out too. So this is a good side note. If we're into UK trans voices, Kachenga is an amazing Black trans woman writer. She just wrote an incredible article on Vice about writing to trans prisoners. That's incredible. Charlie Craggs, Monroe Birdgoff, Sean Fay. These are all incredible UK trans voices. I think it's just reminding myself to do that. And as long as I'm still reminding myself that I'm not an individual, like I think that's the trap, is that social media culture and influencer culture, quote unquote, all these things try and force us to like really think that we're like this individual thing. And it's reminding myself that I can never succeed as an individual, that the only way I can succeed is with a community. And to keep that in the center of what I do relaxes me.
What can, you know, our audience of 20-somethings and 30-somethings be doing today to be just in the position to be performing at a high level in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s?
It's your job in your 20s to figure out all the systems in your body. And having looked at hundreds of people's brains at 40 Years of Zen, the Neurofeedback Center, it's an expensive 5-day intensive program for executives. Different people have different skills. And if you find that there's something that you can do, but you don't like it and it makes you tired, so you say, I better do more of that so I won't be so weak, you're totally doing it wrong. And that's a big theme in Game Changers. In fact, it's the first law in Game Changers is don't do that. Now, there are skills you must have. You have to be good enough at this in order to function. But when you realize, okay, you have some superpowers and they're no better or worse than your friend's superpowers, they're probably different. Just like you have an ideal diet and the foods that are most compatible with your body might not be the same as your friend. And neither of them is good or bad. They're just different. So it's your job to understand your strengths and your weaknesses and figure out what strengths do you want to double down on and what weaknesses are you going to say, oh, thank God, I know I'm weak at that. I can hire that. And even if you're 25 and you're just doing your first company and you only have $12 an hour to pay someone, spend your $12 an hour to pay someone on the stuff that you suck at that makes you tired. Because if you look at what that's going to do for you over the course of the next 50 years, you will be doing really well. And there's a statement, and I'll paraphrase it, but it's something about entrepreneurs. The millionaires figured out how to do a lot of things, that they're good at figuring out how to do things, and the billionaires figure out who is going to do the things. And it's a completely different mindset. People say, Dave, how did you scale Bulletproof the way you have? And I've raised $68 million of venture capital. Bulletproof was a blog that I started on the side, in 2012, late 2011 or something. And it's 2018. And we're in, every Whole Foods, and Sprouts, and, all over the place on Bulletproof and Amazon and all that. So how is that possible? Well, it's because I know what I'm not good at, and I know what I'm good at. And I learned how to hire people. So one of the things you could do is just be real comfortable with your strengths and weaknesses. Do your work on your emotions, like you were talking about. How do you feel your feelings? When you start a company, your company's your baby. And if you choose to have kids, the way I did, I delivered both my kids at home. When you have a baby, you feel like it's a part of you. It's actually part of your energetic field. When you have a company, the company is another kind of baby and it's part of your energetic field. That means anything that feels like a threat to the company feels like it's going to kill you, like a tiger in your living room about to eat you. And so you go through this huge amount of stress and anxiety. And it's your job to learn how to allow the company to exist and be supported by you, but to not feel like you're going to die if your company doesn't do what you want it to do, even if the company goes out of business. I've failed lots of times in business. And it's that I feel like I'm going to die when my business isn't doing well that causes so much pain. And if you heard that and you say, how am I going to perform over long periods of time? Stop feeling like you are your career or your company and just realize you're entirely independent of that. Stop feeling like the rule in Game Changers, like how much money you make is going to make you happy. One of the things I wish I'd told myself when I was 20 is stop chasing the money. Of the 450 people whose interviews got consolidated into the wisdom in Game Changers, not one single person named money, fame, or power as their three most important pieces of advice. And if you look at the way I phrase that question, if someone came to you tomorrow and said, I want to perform better at everything I do as a human being, what are your three most important pieces of advice? Well, when you get this from Nobel Prize winners and all this, this is the answer to your, what would you do in your 20s kind of a question. I'm not sure I could tell you in one answer, but I do think the 46 laws here, the right answer is in there, but it's a different law for a different person. And the book is written so that you go through there and you say, this one really stood out. And there's exercises at the end of each law to see if it's right for you and tells you what to do. And just pick 3 and do those. And when you're done, you're going to have more energy. You're going to have more freedom. And then you'll probably pick a few more. But no one on earth is going to do all 46 at once. But this is a lot of wisdom. I wish someone had told me all these things. And frankly, to grow Bulletproof the way I have, I got to interview all these people and ask them the questions, which helped me be a better CEO and just a better father and things like that.
I love it. Yeah, just the last thing to say. One of the things I really love about going into Bulletproof in Santa Monica is it's so funny, and I don't know if this shift happened with Game Changers, but seeing the focus on gratitude and community in such a place that's, science led. A lot of the food and beverage there is based on science that, helps us look better. But then to see, you are your community and these things, it always gives me pause. I'm like, oh, wow. We are finally at a place and time in our culture when we could merge these two, when we could recognize that in addition to the science.
The science of gratitude is profound because we can put people in fMRI machines and we can get EEGs. And a big part of the training that I do with people at 40 Years of Zen is, hey, if you don't experience gratitude, you can't experience forgiveness. And this is, by the way, something that's a major thing in your 20s. And your body picked up all sorts of patterns from your early childhood. It's basically a system trying to figure out how to stay alive in the world without any knowledge of what the world is. So if someone yelled at you when you were 2, for a good reason, probably like because you tried to stick your tongue in the socket or whatever, like 2-year-olds do stupid things, right? But at the time, it really rattled you and it stuck. So now someone yells at you and you're 25 in a meeting and you freeze because that's what you did when you were 2. This wasn't a decision you made. It was an automatic response. Well, we all have that. It doesn't matter how good you are, or if you're alive, we all have just patterns that are dysfunctional. And it turns out to let go of dysfunctional patterns, there's a recipe that we use at 40 Years of Zen. And it starts with gratitude. And then you can go into forgiveness. Which is really profound. And there's various spiritual teachings from the West, from the East, where they talk about compassion and forgiveness and all these things. I'll tell you, if someone pisses you off and you're carrying that grudge around, you want to perform well for the next 50 years, learn how to be grateful. So if someone did something that really hurt your feelings, really made you mad, you can look at it as, all right, what did I learn from this? And the first thing you do is gratitude. What's the one thing that came out of this that was good? And even if it's something really bad, I was in a really bad car accident. Like, well, okay, I'm in the hospital for 2 months, but at least I get a new car. And you focus on the fact you got a new car, right? It wasn't worth it. Yeah. But your body is so wired that if you can just feel gratitude, it turns off all the inner whining and all the pain and suffering. So now you're being grateful for things that actually sucked, right? And then you go on to the next thing, which is I'm going to forgive the other driver for hitting me or whatever it is. And we teach people this with electrodes on their head to make sure that they're not cheating on it. But gratitude is that important because it lets you stop carrying a grudge, because grudges are the most expensive thing. They have no return ever. They cost you all the time. And if you accumulate more and more of them over your life, you'll just get old and it'll suck.
I just got my Warby Parker 5 frames at home for free. I get to try them on, see how they look, and then pick the ones I love the most. I'll talk about that in a second. But I'm just so excited by this brand. They were founded with a rebellious spirit and a lofty goal to create boutique quality eyewear at a revolutionary price point. Okay, they start at $95, and that includes prescription lenses. Come on. You don't have to pay an exorbitant amount of money for really stylish eyewear. And what we love is that this is eyewear with a purpose. Almost 1 billion people worldwide lack access to glasses. This means that 15% of the global population cannot effectively learn or work, which is crazy because glasses were invented freaking 700 years ago. So we should be on top of this. And Warby Parker partners with nonprofits like Vision Spring to ensure that for every pair of glasses sold, a pair is distributed to someone in need. And they believe that everyone has the right to see, and it's just really beautiful. So we're super proud to partner with Warby Parker. Okay, let me tell you about the glasses that I got. They're so damn cute. Okay, so first I got the Amelia in root beer. Root beer is like a tortoise shell. It's super, super cute. And then I got the Briggs, which is like a rounder frame. And I got that in the layered jet black crystal. Super cute. I got a bunch more, but what was so great is that the at-home try-on, you take like a little quiz and the questions are super easy, like kind of the shape of your face, what you naturally gravitate towards, and the style. It was really easy and they got it right. So I'm really excited to kind of try them on, look at myself in the mirror, ask my friends, and then choose the ones I love. So again, glasses start at $95, including prescription lenses. Lenses include anti-glare and anti-scratch coatings. And I just can't express enough how easy the free home try-on program is. They ship free and includes a prepaid return label. And so if you'd like to try warbyparker.com/almost30 to take the quiz and order your free home try-on. And they also have just introduced Scout by Warby Parker, comfortable, breathable, and affordable daily contact lenses. So check those out, super affordable. And you can order a trial pack that includes 6 days worth of contacts for only $5. And then you receive $5 off your next Warby Parker order. So warbyparker.com/almost30, and you can take your quiz and get your free home try-on, or you can order a trial pack of the Scout contact lenses. That's 6 days worth of contacts for only $5 and then receive $5 off. So warbyparker.com/almost30. Can I just express how excited I am to have cereal back in my life? Okay, do you miss your favorite childhood cereals, but gave them up like me because of all the sugar? I mean, Frosted Flakes, no more. It's kind of sad, but I am just so happy I met Catalina Crunch. It's the world's first keto-friendly zero sugar cereal. They have delicious flavors like dark chocolate, cinnamon toast, maple waffle, honey graham, and it's really good for you. And it keeps me satiated, especially for breakfast. I want to feel really good, have a lot of energy, and be able to hold myself over until lunch. You know what I mean? So it has 10 grams of plant protein to power you through the day, 6 grams of fiber to fill you up. It's gluten-free, grain-free, dairy-free, soy-free, and vegan. And it also has turmeric in it to help fight inflammation and boost immunity. I mean, cereal makes me feel a certain way, and I'm connected emotionally to this as well. If you'd like to try Catalina Crunch, you can go to catalinacrunch.com and use our code almost30 for 10% off your order. So that's CATALINA crunch.com and use code almost30 for 10% off your order.
Most of the time, women do not necessarily feel a deep sense of safety. It doesn't need to be physical safety, but it's really emotional safety. So we don't always feel emotionally safe in a relationship. if we hold back in a relationship where we're constantly trying to tweak ourselves to what we think that person needs, we're not feeling emotionally safe with that person. And where did that originate from? Did that originate from childhood, or the attachment that Lindsay, or lack of attachment or detachment that Lindsay was talking about? Did it happen sometime later in life? Like, something's happened. And we cannot feel that sense of safety. Now, the sense of not feeling enough, we all have it. Every single one of us feels that we are not enough at some point, and we have established our self-worth based on an external factor. And those 4 factors typically are success and achievement, which feeds into my Wonder Woman, our physical body, which creates the femme fatale archetype, people pleasing and being there for others and never wanting to disappoint anyone else, and that's the nurture archetype. And then it's being different and unique and spiritual, and that would be my ethereal archetype. So this sense of self is developed out of a wound. It's developed because it's not enough. Like the femme fatale, which is the one that bases her self-worth on her physical body, is not that she received accolades as a child saying, oh my goodness, you're such a pretty girl, and like, look at you, and lots of attention. It's more that she didn't feel pretty. Maybe the sister was prettier. Maybe she went to high school and everybody else had better clothes than her, and she just felt not enough. And so therefore, to catch up, that was her coping strategy. Or say the Wonder Woman, which is about success and achievement. It can be the father who's really encouraging her to excel. It can be the mother too. So, that father-daughter relationship. And so one day she comes home and, she's got like an A- or something. And it's like, I know you could have done better. And so that feels like, oh my God, I disappointed my father. I feel such a sense of shame. And then boom, you create this personality, which is like, I need to be the best, need to be the best, need to be the best. So while it's wonderful to have this sense of self-worth when you're successful or when you look pretty, and we don't want to take that away, there's a flip to it. You're really vulnerable when it's not there. And so it's truly understanding, well, where did that develop? And why? Because it's an untruth. It's often something very simple that's happened in childhood. It's a flippant comment or just some misinterpretations, because as a young child, between really until the age of 21, your prefrontal cortex, which is where your rational thought takes place, isn't fully developed. So we're always viewing it through the lens of an emotional response. And it's like, I say, children are little narcissists. It's all about them. And so if a parent does something, it's like me, like I've done something wrong. And so it's just that coping strategy to be enough. And as adults, we want to start to look at that to go, oh, wow, that was flawed, right? I truly am enough. And how do I rewind that? How do I sort of reprogram what happened in my childhood so I have this greatest sense of strength to just be who I am, so I don't need to overdo anything. So I'm not working these sort of 12 to 13, 14-hour days and skipping lunch. So I'm not getting into relationships where I'm the codependent and being like the doormat there. So I'm not obsessively fixated on food and calories and keto and so forth, because I'm thinking that I need to be this certain size to be enough, or that I need to be the most spiritual, amazing, unique, creative person out there on the planet. So that's sort of where we end up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The reprogramming is interesting. And we've talked a lot about it and done a lot of that work. So I'm kind of wondering if the way in which we eat is also a way in which we can reprogram, like not the right way, but the more aligned way to eat is helpful in reprogramming. And what does that look like?
Yes, the food is at the base. That's the way that I look at it. So if your food's off, let's just say that you're skipping meals all the time, then your blood sugar levels are going to be destabilized. You're going to feel more anxious. You're going to feel more jittery. Your adrenaline and noradrenaline is going to be more supercharged. So to think that you can make really clear, rational decisions, it's a little hampered by that. And if we don't watch what we're eating, then it will change the hormones in the body as well as the lifestyle. And those hormones, whether they're insulin or cortisol or our sex hormones like progesterone or estrogen, have really far-reaching effects on the body. The way that I work with women is really looking at body fat. That's what I specialize in, is complicated weight loss, and adrenal and thyroid issues and digestive issues. And when I do a scan of a woman's body, I'm saying, where are you storing body fat? It's not so much about their body shape that they're genetically being given, but it's like, where do you store it? Because that will give me an indication of what the dominant hormone is. So most of us know that cortisol, you'll store body fat on your abdominal area. So if that's one of your chief complaints, then you know that cortisol and stress is your thing. And you need to not only eat in a way that doesn't exacerbate those cortisol levels and adrenaline and noradrenaline levels by eating on a very regular basis. So intermittent fasting would be contraindicated if that was the case with you.
Contraindicated, so like you shouldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Super clear.
And so for if you tend to store body fat on your upper thighs, then I would say that there's a little bit of an estrogen issue there, whether it's a clearance issue, and you can alter that with food. So that would be cruciferous vegetables, which are the key component in that is dim, and it helps to metabolize estrogen to a weaker form. But you could also be storing a little bit more fat on the upper thighs because you're a Wonder Woman and you're really stressed and you're eating up your progesterone, because cortisol and progesterone share the same raw material, and the body's always going to prioritize stress and cortisol over progesterone. So you can sort of start to store it that way. So by looking at a woman's body, and I want women to really understand it too, so they know what hormones they're actually looking at, because it's pretty subtle. Like somebody can be carrying, you don't need to be carrying a lot of body fat. I can read you at 5 pounds extra to see what's actually going on. And it's helpful for you to know. It gives you an insight into, wow, it's my lifestyle, it's my thoughts, and it's my food behaviors. And what can I do to really correct all of that?
What's the one? There's one of the types is over. So we talked about the cortisol, Wonder Woman, belly fat. The upper thighs tends
to be the nurturer.
And then the overall, gaining weight overall.
That's a nurturer too. And so the nurturer, that'll typically be the first response. And that's because the nurturer is so depleted that she ends up comfort eating. And that comfort eating is really rich in carbohydrates. It could be a macrobiotic bowl. It doesn't need to be like a bag of chips or something, right? And that stimulates insulin, and insulin tells the body to store body fat everywhere. It doesn't have a particular place. So if you are storing body fat everywhere, then for you're really sensitive to carbohydrates. And so a reduced carbohydrate plan is the one for you. And that's the type of plan that I've created for the nurturer in the book. But not everybody needs to follow such a low carbohydrate based plan. So for the other archetypes, they actually don't, because they're not as sensitive to carbohydrates as the nurturer. So when we eat carbohydrates, the body converts that to glucose, and it's either going to go down 2 pathways. It's going to go to energy, including stored energy, which is glycogen, or it's going to go to body fat. And when the glucose and insulin is dysregulated, you are going to shoot it down to body fat and not to energy. And so then the nurturer feels tired and overweight. But if that pathway isn't impaired, then you can eat those carbohydrates and it's going to go to glycogen and energy. And so it'll support the energy levels and won't go into body fat. So that's why not everybody needs to be on these very restrictive, and they are restrictive. Like the ketogenic diet is a really restrictive, low carbohydrate diet. It's like 5%, including all your vegetables. So it isn't necessary to follow these plans to actually see success. And really my food philosophy is you want to be able to eat the most amount of food and the most variety while still seeing success.
Yeah, there's a lack of appreciation for evolution and for change
on
social media. So if your opinion does change, if you were to be one way and then you're another, it's like they deem you untrustworthy, or they think that you've gone mad, or there's just like an inability to believe that someone may have learned something and changed their opinion and have grown or evolved, that like I just can't really get down with.
Yeah. And that affects how people then show up. So then people are now showing up to please that idea of who they are, rather than actually just be who they are and change and evolve and move on and, and express different beliefs or change their mind about a belief. Or, like I remember when I stopped being vegan, which my body gave me the direction to, on no uncertain terms, tell me to start eating animal product again. After 3 years hardcore, vegan pregnancy, vegan breastfeeding, on no uncertain terms, my body told me that it needed food from the animal kingdom again. And as soon as I shared a photo of a butterfly cupcake I thought you were a solid human, Peter. You just disgust at me and just how much of a shit person I was. And again, the other thing with social media is that no one on there actually knows you. And that's the truth. Like, I think about how many people truly know everything about me and everything that goes on in my life and all of my struggles and, all of the things that I've been through privately, like that aren't aligned for me to share. Very few people know that. And yet we make comments and assumptions about people as if we do. And we follow their journey as if we do know everything about them. I have people who comment things like, what would you know about not having any money, Peter? And I'm like, do you want me to tell you about the winters where we had no hot water and my mum had to boil water on the stove and pour it into our bath? I'm sorry I didn't include that on my Instagram bio. Do you want me to tell you the stories about my mum sitting up at night wondering if we're going to lose the house? Like, do you want to see photos of me working my $5 an hour job? Like, but people comment like that. And it's just like, sure, we can just be like, the age-old like quote that we get from mentors everywhere is fuck the haters, they're just blinded by your light and all that stuff. But part of it's like, yeah, that's great. But I'm just at a point in my life where I'm like, I don't need to prove anything to anyone. And for so long, I felt like I did. Like I've been there. I'm not saying this as someone who's like holier than thou. I've just been there. I've been through the trying to impress, trying to maintain, making things because I could. I've just been there. And now I look at my daughter and I'm just like, it just snapped me and it's just snapped me into a perspective that's just like, I don't know. And yeah, so there's so much to it with social media. And it's not about, sure, Instagram can like take the like count off and Instagram can change all these things, but it's ultimately about us taking responsibility for our life, our nervous system, our relationship with social media and our phones, where we're looking for approval, where we're hiding. Like it's about us taking responsibility. And that's why I had to turn social media off for a while, because I needed to go through that process in a way that was private and not giving people bit blow by blows, because it's just, but again, it's such a powerful thing. And we've got to acknowledge how brilliant it is for people, bringing people together. It's just that we as individuals have to get a grip on it. And we have to not think that, we may have escaped the 9 to 5 or the matrix or whatever you want to call it, but there's very much still one. And even in the personal development world, a system and a cycle that you can subscribe to and can keep you from your highest well-being. And for me, if I could just have one message for everyone on social media, it would be, I'm not your coach. I'm not giving you advice. It doesn't mean that's not in a loving way, but everybody needs to be able to discern for themselves. And that's my belief with everything. You can't stumble across something and take such personal offense to it if you truly believe in freedom of speech. We have to take the responsibility of discerning. Is this true for me? Is this person speaking about something that's relevant for me? Is this in alignment for me? Do I believe in this? Rather than expecting everybody to change their view to please where we are at in our life. And that's where it just got really tiring for me, and why I'll get on when I want to get on, and then I'll get off when I want to get off. But it's not currently aligned for me to give people blow by blows of my life or to share things that I feel are not appropriate anymore.
Thinking about emotional intelligence within the financial world, and would it work?
No. I'm at the point nothing works. Right? I'm here. The next diversity committee doesn't work. The mentoring programs don't work. The sponsorship programs don't work. Why? Because they haven't worked. And so we're not waiting for the pipeline doesn't work. The pipeline has been full at the junior level since the 80s. Okay.
What is the pipeline?
Well, it's you got to hire half female and half male. And with our new diversity and our, sensitivity training and our unconscious bias training, all of it will work through, but nothing's working. What works is two things. The CEO just friggin' decides to do it. Just decides to do it. And Mark Benioff or an Ajay Bang at MasterCard just closes the gender pay gaps and takes no excuses and fires people who are not, falling in line, makes it as big a business priority as, selling the new product, right? And truly believes it. Truly. And I've had to do that at Elevest where I've overruled. We started diversity is our thing. We're half female. We're 40% people of color. And I've had to overrule my managers who then want to hire that person like themselves. And I have to say, your bias, your subtle gender bias is showing. I'm going to overrule you because that's just what has to happen. So I think it's they decide to do it, or two, we get them from the bottom, right? We come together and say, leadership team, no, this family leave policy isn't good enough, right? We got to change. So it's either strength in numbers or strength of the individual.
How have you educated yourself? Like, what are some resources that books you've been reading or places that you get your information to, like when you talk about uncovering your cognitive biases, what have you done to do that?
Yeah. It's been really a journey. It's been one piece of research on top of another. I think I started with Catalyst research, which is where I first started to learn about the business case for diversity. It blew me away. I remember being at a conference, being in a meeting with the woman who ran Catalyst, and she started to talk about how, as we just said, diverse teams outperform smarter teams. I'm like, I think I stopped her. I'm like, whoa, we got to do that again. Talk to me, right? And then on top of that, Harvard Business Review, signing up on Twitter or whatever you use for your news to see what's coming out of it. And the irony is coming out of Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, the World Bank, all these financial institutions that talk about the power of diversity, but then don't actually practice it as much themselves.
Wow. Just to switch gears a little bit, you have a son?
And a daughter.
And
2 cats.
Oh, raising feminist cats too.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So what, like raising a son,
yeah,
especially, like, what is that like in this time? And what is important to you to instill in him? And is it conversations, or is it just modeling and doing what you do?
Well, it's bringing him in. I'll never forget the mistake I made when a few years ago, the documentary Misrepresentation came out, which is about the portrayal of women in mass media. And for the days before, telling my daughter, it's coming out, we're watching it together. Get your homework done early because on Tuesday night, 8:00, we're watching it together. And she and I are right there on the sofa. And Jonathan walks in the room. And I'm like, I am such an effing idiot. Because I told her we were watching it. And I didn't tell him or my husband. And happily, he was like, hey, what's going on? And brought the whole family in. Right. And so as a mother, making sure you're having these conversations, not just with your daughter, but with your sons as well, is super important.
Can't wait.
Yeah. And by the way, the flip side, I would say, one thing I don't want to leave here without talking about is talking to our kids about money the same way. So there's recent research that says that parents still today, when they talk to their sons about money, will talk about sort of in a building wealth in an expansive way, in a, have money, have plenty sort of way. And they talk to their daughters about saving, right? Hoarding the money, protecting the money. And as we tend to grow up, teen magazines, women magazines talk to us in an infantilizing and patronizing way about money. Think about media. Think about, Carrie Bradshaw. And she bought too many shoes. Yeah. She can't afford an apartment. Now, there's a whole generation who thinks they're Carrie Bradshaw, right? That's what we all identified with. I probably was Miranda.
I was more Samantha.
I love that. Nobody was
Miranda or Carrie, Miranda, Samantha,
Charlotte. Nobody was Charlotte.
No people were Charlotte, but
they wouldn't admit it.
Yeah.
But think about that, right? Like, how dumb can you be?
Yeah.
And so the articles are all about, don't buy the latte, save the money. None of it. If on CNBC, Dylan Ratigan turned to Jim Cramer and said, don't buy the latte, right? Or what's your money type? Are you a Carrie or Miranda? And we never talk about diversified investment portfolios. And so we grow up with a sense of money is not for us. We're sort of dumb about money. It belongs to the guys. Look, It's all the guys in the money industries, venture capital and Wall Street. And so as we were talking about earlier, there's no amount of money you make that you would actually be willing to share with your friends. You are much more likely to talk to your friends about sex than money, even though we started as a puritanical society. And women prefer to talk about their own death than money. So we have iced this desire in women, which I sort of say, if the guys who we love, but still, were to go back 100 years ago and said, let's put together a plot to keep the women from being as powerful as they can be. What should we do? I have an idea. Let's make money a source of shame for them. That's a great idea. And then when it's time for them to ask for a raise, because they never talk about it, they'll have no idea how much to ask for. It's amazing.
Wow.
We'll keep them from investing.
Yeah, we'll make them feel ugly.
Yeah, right. It's going to be great. It will, we'll sort of equate feminism, with anti-money, right? We'll make money tacky and unattractive.
If there is something interfering with your happiness or is preventing you from achieving your goals, for me, I have, bouts of anxiety throughout, even the craziest, most joyous parts of my life. I do have anxiety. And so I found BetterHelp, and it's been really great as we've been on the road. And they basically provide a service where you could be around the world, wherever you are. It's like online counseling, online therapy. And so basically you can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor, and you'll get a thoughtful and timely response. Plus you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so you won't ever have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room. And they have a broad range of expertise in the BetterHelp network, which may not be locally available where you are. So this is really, really great and so convenient. I do have to say, this is not a crisis hotline. It's not self-help. It is professional counseling done securely online, and it's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. So if you want to start living a happier life today, listen, no shame around this. We all have our own struggles. And so if there's something like BetterHelp that could help you, let's go for it. So you can visit the website and read all the testimonials. There's so many of them. But BetterHelp.com/almost30. That's BetterHelp.com/almost30. And you can get 10% off your first month. So that's BetterHelp.com/almost30. 10% off your first month. Join the over 500,000 people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. Anyone else have pouches of snacks in their purse? Well, if you don't, I have a new pouch for you. Super Fat is my favorite nut butter. This is keto, paleo, vegan, and damn, they do it right. Made from macadamia and almonds, which provide essential fatty acids for our bodies, which are really important to absorb vitamins like vitamin A and D, E, and K. So it's important that our body gets these, and it doesn't produce it on its own. So we have to get it through our diet. And Super Fat, holy moly, does it right. My favorites right now are the cacao coconut and the macadamia coconut. So smooth, yummy, comes in a pouch, convenient. So you can just squeeze it onto like an apple or onto bread or cracker or onto your own tongue, just on the go. You can take them anywhere. There's no sugar added, certified vegan, certified keto, all the things. They also have limited edition holiday flavor, the cacao mint. So damn good. So these fats are so great for your brain. They fuel your brain, just increasing cognitive function. It's a metabolism booster. Say no more, y'all. It's also gluten-free. So if you're gluten-free, there you go. Superfat.com. Use the code almost30 at checkout for 15% off your order. That's superfat.com. Use our code almost30 for 15% off your first order.
What was really nice was so many people, hundreds of people said such nice things to me after all this stuff happened. And anyone who knows me, it was one of those where it's I have to learn to wake up in the middle of the night, from a bad stress stream and be like, I am so proud of who I am. And sure, like, do I need to like tighten some ends at work and be more detail oriented? Because I also feel like I live such a small life because it's like, you know, I have my family life and then I go to work and I don't do that many social things just because I'm busy and tired. And then I like put things on the internet and I forget that like 100,000 people are seeing it. And so it's very, you know, it taught me a lot about really being, I have like a woman, like a spiritual advisor woman who's a family friend who I talk to. And she's like, you need to like really think about every little thing you put on the internet because that is energy that goes out into the world. So I really now have to, it's also like, I can't just feel bad for myself or like harp on things. Like my life has to continue. And I am the sole financial supporter for a lot of people right now. So yeah, like I had to do a fucking Evian post after like all this shit's happening when like my mother-in-law is sick in Italy. And I was like, yo, I need to push this out a couple of weeks. And they were like, well, the client, and I was like, forget about it. And then I was like, well, my mom was like, you can't, like, we have to pay the mortgage on this house. And I'm like, all right, well, what's the fucking compromise here? Like,
Dude, literally. That's the worst when like you're feeling some type of way and you have a brand thing. I'm like, oh, I'm feeling
and that's
like
really new to me.
Depressed and shit, but I'm posting my skincare routine.
Isn't it?
It's the worst.
And I'm like, people know me, right? They know that I'm in Italy right now. So I can't just be like,
you almost have to create like a window. Like, hey, within this week window.
My mood will be...
When I'm feeling super surface.
Totally.
Bullshitting.
It's been bullshitty.
Yeah, it's what someone was like, oh, you need that money. And I was like...
Yeah, I do, bitch.
Yeah, bitch.
I do.
I do.
I saw that and I think you did that very, very well. I was like, yo. I literally saw that. I'm like, yo.
I just never, like, we talk about this all the time. So here's also the thing. And Gwyneth Paltrow said this when I heard her speak the other day. She said so many things that was like, it was almost like I was meant to be there. Because there were so many things that she said that I feel like were like a gift to me. But she also gets fucking ripped.
Oh my God. I think about that probably once a week.
And so someone asked her a question about it. And she said, if you have a blog or an Instagram account, and I always say, I use this exact term all the time. So it was, because if you don't follow journalistic decorum, which like I study journalism. So I'm like, this is not how this works. You can't just fucking write what you want and like not fact check or get timelines or ask for a quote from someone. So she's like, if you don't follow journalistic decorum, if you don't have a brand within that category, if you're just someone who decided one day to have an opinion about a lot of things, she said, you are not in the arena. You're not, I don't care what you say. And the cheapest, and she goes, and if it's for clickbait, it's even worse. And if you are using the anger that is trolls on the internet as like little shit bitch minions to like go destroy someone, that's the lowest form of social communication. So that I was like, oh, listen, I'm all about calling some shit out and doing what's right. And like, I will be the first person to be like, I fucked up. You called me out on it. Like, won't happen again. And thank you for making me more detail oriented and want to work harder. But when it gets nasty and personal, you are not in the realm. And I pray for you. So I do that at night now. I pray for the people who are mean to me, because could you imagine living that kind of life where you get excited to find something that will hurt someone else?
The key transformation that changed us from, oh, I go on Facebook occasionally to see what my friends are up to, into I go on it by default at every down moment, was this shift that is now about incoming social approval indicators. And that completely changed our relationships with our phone. And I think it was that more than anything else that has driven people to this point where they say, look, I don't hate the thing I'm doing in the moment when I'm looking at my phone, but I really hate the fact that I've looked at it 5 hours today.
And because, that drive to the phone for that validation happened, I feel like now everyone just turns to their phone for all the answers. So whether it's the Google, the Facebook, the
Mhm.
Instagram, the apps.
Yeah.
Like it's just a one-stop shop for everything you need instead of maybe having a meaningful conversation about, something that you're going through rather than Googling, like, what do you do when you're sad after a breakup?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's outsourcing of everything in our
Yes.
life, you know?
Yeah. Well, and it's not just outsourcing, it's also beginning to replace.
Yeah.
And so this is something I discovered. So as part of the book, I did this experiment where I ended up being over 1,500 people
Wow.
to take a month away from all of it. So I used the term optional, personal, digital technology, but basically social media, streaming media, online news, basically anything that wasn't crucial for work or crucial for like finding when your daughter needed to be picked up from school or something like this. But anything that was optional.
So were email, Slack included?
These are not included. So I see that as work. So
Okay,
this was
got
just in your personal life, essentially the things on your phone.
Got it.
And one of the big lessons that came back from this is people were shocked to discover the degree to which they had allowed this to push everything else out. And the two things, especially for younger people, that were almost crippling in the first days of doing this 30 days of absence was the boredom and the loneliness.
Mm.
And there's this discovery that, okay, maybe almost any activity, the type of high quality leisure activities that require energy, but we're deeply satisfying, what to do with your time, that, I'm going to go out there and do this. I'm going to meet these people. I'm going to work on this project. I'm going to help this community group. That gets really pushed to the side. It can be almost unbearable then to be faced with time. And then the loneliness factor, the degree to which this sort of shallower back and forth connections on the phone had come to take over almost the totality of people's social lives. And when they took it away, there was almost a crippling loneliness, which is quite different than the sort of cycle of solitude and deep connection that really defines the way that humans have always been social. And so it's really, the phone has pushed out of people's lives a lot of things that are incredibly important for a deeply satisfying human experience and replaced them with these shallower simulacrum of those type of experiences. You feel this sort of existential gnawing. Like, I know this is not quite the same as what I used to do, but it's if you look at it all the time, it's distracting enough, it's pleasing enough that you can essentially paper that over and ignore it. And so when I had those 1,500 people basically rip that paper off the whole, it was a sort of a existentially fraught, but really meaningful experience for them.
That's beautiful. And, I was thinking about the Facebook thing a little bit before you talked about that. Do you think that there's like a responsibility that a company like that has as it relates to their end users because they're so impactful on physiological parts of us?
Yeah. Well, Sean Parker, the founding president, came out a couple of years ago and he basically did a mea culpa. He said, look, we're hackers. We were hacking your brain. Feel bad about it. It's like, that's what we do.
Yeah. Didn't he say that he doesn't let his kids on it or something?
Yeah. And that's common with a lot of, this came out of Nick Bilton's reporting on Steve Jobs back before he died. The fact that Steve Jobs sent his kids to Woodruff schools where you don't use any technology and you spend time outside. And it turned out that these were actually quite popular among Silicon Valley executives. And Jobs told Bilton, like, my kids aren't allowed to use iPads. No, of course not till they're older. So the responsibility question is an interesting one. The problem is, the way I see it is, it's like going to ExxonMobil, right? And saying oil and natural gas is bad for the environment. You shouldn't extract oil and natural gas. And they would say, well, this is our business.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do. And I think that's the problem. Facebook, for example, they mine data and attention. And they're really good at it. Their cap right now is about twice that of ExxonMobil. They're worth about $500 billion, which is about twice the market cap of ExxonMobil. Their entire business model is extracting as much time and attention as possible. And I think it's built to a substantial degree among the fact that they're sort of hacking people's psychologies. So to them, I don't think there's any way they could make any significant improvement along those lines without just drastically reducing their bottom line, which actually legally they're not even allowed to do because of their shareholder responsibilities.
Oh, wow.
And I think, and I don't know if this is true, but it's a bit of a guess of mine. The fact that the shift in the conversation around, let's say, things like Facebook right now is focusing much more on things like privacy and more recently content.
Yeah.
It's bad news for Facebook because it brings a lot of negative attention. But I also think it's good news as far as they're concerned because it takes the attention away from the one thing they can't do anything about, which is their product being addictive. That's the thing I think they don't want to talk about because they can't do anything about that without significantly reducing their revenue. They can work on privacy without significantly working their revenue. They can work on content moderation without significantly reducing their revenue. But if they change their product so we no longer feel like we need to check it all the time, they're in trouble. I worked with a lot of people for digital minimalism where we went through and got very intentional about their Facebook use. Most people discovered in about 20 minutes a week, they can get about 95% of the value they're getting out of Facebook. Twice a week, they go on. There's a couple certain things to do, a couple people to keep up with, a couple Facebook groups, and that's it. And they're getting 95% of the value. That'd be devastating for Facebook if everyone started doing that.
Wow.
If you really just did what you needed to do to get the value out of it, as opposed to using it 2 to 3 hours a day, that's the end of that company, basically.
I was thinking about when you were talking about like, you know, growing up on TV and like the hills in the city and all that kind of stuff. Like, how do you think that has shaped you, like in a good way and then, you know, maybe in a negative way?
So I think the biggest thing that it did, two things. One, it like gave me this exposure that I obviously would have never had and never been able to do all of the things that I'm able to do now and talk to as many people as I'm able to talk to. That's like the obvious thing. But on like a not so positive side, I feel like it stunted me a little bit because I started filming the show when I was 18 and it got successful, maybe not 18, maybe 20. But anyways, it got successful pretty quickly. And there were lots of people doing things for you all the time and then like creating a life for you that you weren't creating for yourself, which a lot of 22-year-olds were doing. You know, most 22-year-olds are either graduating college or trying to figure out what they're doing with the rest of their life and really having to formulate their own paths. And I had like this team of producers that were making that all happen for me. You know, they were, and this sounds like ridiculous. I know I'm not like complaining about it. I'm so lucky to have that experience that I had people finding me an apartment in New York and finding me the job at DVF and finding me friends to film with, you know, like all that stuff was really cool. But I feel like I never had to grow. And then when the show was over, it was like, oh my God, like now I really have to work hard and figure out life here because I don't have people working at it for me anymore.
And what did you do? Like what were ways in which you kind of came back to yourself in that way?
So I had a hard couple years. I started a clothing line and I had actually started it with my father. And then my sister and my brother came to work at it. My father got really sick and he ended up passing away in 2013. And my brother and sister and I tried to make it work and we just couldn't make it work without him. So I had to close the doors on that. And that was like major for me. I was like, what am I going to do now? Like I thought the show had set me up to have this huge success of a clothing line. And what am I going to do now? And that's kind of when, you know, social media started becoming a thing and I was able to collaborate with so many brands and become like my own little marketing agency and then start the YouTube and reinvent myself in that way and really engage with people more. And I think it's because of social media that I've been able to like reinvent my career after the clothing line. So yeah, was that an answer to your question or did I just like spiral into something else?
Yeah, no, but I'm thinking
like, where am I?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a really... Well, one, it's like coming back to yourself during that time of like transition out of the you know, reality TV world, but then like losing your father. Like I can't even begin to fathom like what that is like. And I did watch your episode on Hollywood Medium.
Yeah.
Which was so powerful. The most powerful episode I've ever seen.
Really?
So beautiful. Yeah, it was so beautiful. And we've, you know, had experiences with mediums, but I just felt, I cannot imagine losing a pillar of the family like that. You know, your mom is so incredible. It's just like, yeah. So during that time, like, how are you?
I didn't know what I was going to do with the rest. I didn't know how I was going to survive. Yeah. Like not only was he my father, but he was telling me what to do every day with the company. I mean, I just felt like I'm nowhere without him. And it was brutal. I mean, it affected every part of my life. I was fighting with Timmy all the time because I became so insecure that I was like a burden to him, that, you know, I wasn't the person that he decided to marry. You know, like he didn't know 3 years into our relationship that my father was going to die and I was going to become like a sort of slightly depressed person. So it was really a tumultuous time. And yeah, it was, but there's always like, for me, and I talked about this in my podcast with my sisters, but there has been a little bit of a silver lining in that I don't know if my dad were still here, if I would have had the guts to quit, to stop my company. And the company had become a huge burden for me. It was huge responsibility and it was a family company. And because he was no longer around, I was like, I can't do this. This is too much of a reminder of him every day. And we can't make it work. I don't have the expertise or the knowledge. So once I closed the doors on that, it was like, oh my God, I could breathe again. And it opened up the door to so many other things that I wanted to do that I didn't even know I wanted to do. And like, I always say, obviously, if I had the choice, I would take my father back in a heartbeat, like no questions asked. But it forced me to take a new path that I'm actually really grateful for.
Thanks so much for joining us for the best of part 2, 2019. It's been a year and we're super proud to be on this journey with you, this journey called life. And we're excited for the new year.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if we have not already, need to express our sincere gratitude and thanks for all of your support and for showing up for one another and for showing up for yourself this year. Meeting you guys in person on tour has been nothing short of astounding for the sheer fact of you guys are making moves and you guys are really owning who you are and taking on the task of getting to know yourself better and to dive into your own spirit and to really truly love and own your life. So huge kudos to you. Thank you so much for inspiring us every single day. And thank you again, like Lindsay said, to our lovely guests. We love you so very much. And we will see you on the next episode. It's going to be an awesome one with just Lindsay and I. So we will see you soon and have a great, great holiday.
Love you all.
Bye.